Well, good afternoon. My name is Julie Krupa. I'm an attorney for the Department of Procurement Services. And on behalf of Mayor Emanuel and Jamie Reese, the city's Chief Procurement Officer, I'd like to welcome you to this workshop on doing business with the City of Chicago. And the reason we have this seminar or workshop is because we understand if you're not familiar with doing business with the city, we have, I wouldn't say a complicated process, but a process you might not be familiar with. So this is a broad overview of how the city does business. If you have questions at the end, I'd be happy to answer. If you have project-specific or contract-specific questions, I'd ask just that you wait to the end of the presentation and we can talk offline just so we're not taking time on a particular contract. So to dive in, the topics we're going to cover today, go over our mission statement, the laws governing the procurement process, the types of procurement we do at the city, a little bit about the certification process, although we have a separate workshop that goes into the different types of certification, contract monitoring compliance, about some programs and bid incentives that we offer, and then we'll touch on navigating the DPS website. So for our mission statement. So the Department of Procurement Services is the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the City of Chicago. So anytime the city needs to purchase something, it comes through our department. And we pledge to work together as a team with our customers to guarantee an open and fair and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. And integrity, public trust, and law are our guiding principles. And speaking of the law, part of the reason we have so many rules regarding our procurement process is we are governed by certain laws and regulations, both state and local. The Municipal Purchasing Act on the state level, and then Chapter 292 of the Municipal Code of Chicago governs how we buy goods and services. There's various types of methods we use to procure goods and services of the city. Small orders, which are typically used for small purchases under $100,000. Competitive bids, request for proposals, request for qualifications, and job order contracts, or JOC. As I mentioned, small orders are for the procurement of goods and services less than $100,000. There's no formal bid specification or public advertisement required for this. What we'll do is we'll get quotes by phone or fax or written quotation from the DPS website. MB, WBE vendors are solicited first, and MB, WBE compliance is required for all contracts over $10,000. So whoever submits the lowest quote in a small order and who is responsive and responsible will be awarded a small purchase contract. With respect to competitive bids, this is for anything $100,000 and more, and this is a traditional formal bid solicitation process. So these are sealed bids that you'll submit. They're advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times in the classified section. They're also available on our website, the cityofchicago.org/procurement. The bids need to be submitted to the bid and bond room in City Hall 103, which is where we're holding this workshop today. And the solicitation period is typically 10 to 30 calendar days. By law, it has to be at least 10 days. And please keep in mind that for some bids, there's a deposit required when you place your bid, but we'll always tell you ahead of time if there's a deposit required in the specification. So some bids will include a pre-bid meeting. So this is, it could involve a site inspection. For example, for a construction project, if we're going to want to take you out to see where you're going to be building, whatever it is we need to have built. So there could be a site inspection after a pre-bid meeting. They're optional, but we do encourage bidders to attend. It's where we go over the requirements for the project. We'll review the specifications. We'll address any concerns that you might have about the specifications. It's your opportunity to ask questions, you get answers right away. And it may result in an addendum or clarification. So for example, if during a pre-bid meeting, bidders ask a question about the specification and say, you know, this is really unclear, I don't really understand what size wall you want me to build. What we'll do is then afterwards we can adjust our specifications and issue an addendum so that it's more clear so everyone bidding on the project has access to that information, and we make sure that our clear requirements are out there. So if there's not a pre-bid meeting, because there's not always one, we encourage you to review the specification very closely and all the contract documents during the solicitation process. And if you have any questions, there's going to be a contract administrator who's identified in the bid package who is going to be your contact person for any of the questions. It's important that you not reach out to the using department or just start calling other people you know in the city, because they're the one contact person that you need to contact. And you don't want to jeopardize the potential of your bid by reaching out to people and getting information that other bidders might not have availability to. So in order to complete your bid, you need to make sure that you're filling out all of the required information. So it's very important to make sure you're reading and making sure you're checking all the boxes that need to be checked, you're signing what needs to be signed, you're getting any sort of signatures notarized that need to be notarized, because if not, your bid can be rejected, because these are all issues of responsiveness. If you're not completing the bid properly, then you're not a responsive bidder and we're not going to consider your bid. So it's very important to make sure that when you're going through, you're filling it out properly, and if you have any questions, you reach out to us ahead of time so we can answer them and help make sure that you're submitting a bid properly. So for the bids that do require a bid deposit, it has to be in the proper form. Cash is not accepted. If there's a bid deposit, it'll typically be 5% of the bid, and it's normally refundable, but there are some instances where the bid is not, or excuse me, the bid deposit is non-refundable, and it has to be timely. So when you're submitting your bid, you need to make sure that it gets in before 11 a.m. here, or however it's submitted it once we roll out e-procurement on the bid opening date. If it's 11:01, your bid's late, so we can't open your bid and it won't be considered. Bid openings occur Monday through Fridays, except for major holidays, at 11 a.m. in City Hall, Bid and Bond Room 103. The bids are opened and read aloud. They're tabulated, and then the bid tabulation and documents are all reviewed for accuracy and completeness. And then the tabulation is then put online on our website within 24 hours after the bid opening so that you can see everybody who bid and what their bids were. For the award process, determination is going to be made about who's the responsive and responsible bidder. So I mentioned responsive means that you've actually conformed to our requirements, you submitted your bid properly. If we've asked for a red truck, you're giving us a red truck in your bid, not a green truck, that you're actually going to be able to give us what we want. And responsibility comes to whether you're actually capable of performing the contract. Do you have the financial wherewithal? Do you have the equipment needed? Do you have the personnel needed? Are you actually going to be able to perform the contract, fulfill it? After this determination is made, we'll make a recommendation for award. Acceptable bids are packaged, and then the bid and contract documents are routed through the Department of Procurement Services and the Department of Law to make sure that they're appropriate and there's a signature and approval process. And at that point, if there is a performance and payment bond, we'll request that along with your insurance. And if a funding agency needs concurrence, which is make sure that they approve of who we're selecting, at that time we'll get concurrence as well. And then after all of those steps, we'll award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, meeting the city's specifications. So it's a lengthy process, but we have to go through this to make sure that we're doing it properly, that we're not awarding contracts and to people who can't perform, or companies that can't perform, and that we're being responsible with city taxpayer dollars. So the next method I'd like to discuss are the requests for proposals. So this is a method used when the city doesn't have in-house technical experts. So the RFP will define the project objectives and scope of services, but it's not going to detail every particular aspect of the project we want, because it's our opportunity for us to say this is what you need, or this is what we need as a city, and you can come back to us and say this is how I can help you achieve that. So it requires a detailed evaluation of the proposals by an evaluation committee, and we evaluate based on criteria that are specified in the request for proposal. So price is a factor, but it's not the only factor. We could also be concerned with how qualified you are, what your staff is like, how many years you've been in business. There's a whole host of factors we could also consider. So an example of this would be, let's say the city needs a safety management system and consulting services, and we want someone that's going to design, develop, and support that system. So we need, if it's for safety management, we need someone that's going to be able to have the capability of designing the system, that has experience designing the system, and is going to be able to maintain it for us throughout the course of however long we need it to run. So in that instance, it could be that price isn't necessarily going to be the most important factor for us. We might really be concerned with the technical capabilities of a company. So that would be a perfect example of why we would use an RFP versus a sealed competitive bid. An award in this type of procurement method is made to the highest rated and ranked respondent. So next is request for qualifications. And this is a method used to solicit qualifications for companies, as the name would indicate. We want companies to submit qualifications who possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in specific disciplines. So the city will pre-qualify companies to build a vendor pool, and then future task orders or individual projects will be awarded to the companies that are qualified within that vendor pool. And evaluation selection is based on the qualifications and technical competence of the respondents. For A&E RFQs, which is architectural engineering contracts, there is no cost proposal involved. It is purely based on qualifications, and a fee schedule is then negotiated as part of a master agreement. And it's most commonly used for architectural engineering design contracts and certain other types of consulting services. So finally, JOC is another type of contracting, job order contracts. So JOC is a firm, fixed-priced, competitively bid, indefinite quantity contract, and it's specifically designed for each department's construction contracts. And this method is used to accomplish small to medium-sized construction projects. So rather than bidding every small and mid-sized project, we can have a JOC pool, and the departments can then have those contractors in that pool solicit or respond and submit their pricing out of a price book, and then whoever gives us the most favorable adjustment factors for a price book will then be awarded the contract. Excuse me.
I'm so sorry. Give me a second.
Oh, you're fine. So when I say price book, just to explain a little bit about what that is. So with JOC contracting, there'll be a book that actually has all different varieties of construction tasks that you can think of, and there'll be prices associated with that in a description and a unit of measure for each task. And then what the contractor does is they do adjustment factors against the prices in that book, and that's how they put together what you would think of their bid for that particular project. So that's how those are awarded. And adjustment factors could be work performed during normal hours versus overtime versus night and weekend. There's a variety of different ways that those adjustments can work. And the value of the JOC contract is going to depend on what the department needs and budget. Sorry, I forgot to move the slide there. So those are the contracting methods that we're going to cover. Right now I'm going to shift into certification. And like we mentioned, I'd be happy to answer any questions about those once we finish through the slides. So certification. There are several types of firms that we certify. MBEs, which are minority-owned business enterprises, WBEs, which are women-owned business enterprises, BEPDs, which are business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities. There are DBEs, disadvantaged business enterprises, which is a federal program. ACDBEs, which are airport concession disadvantaged business enterprises, and also VBEs, which is not up there, but a new one, which is veteran-owned business enterprises. And the basic eligibility requirements are very similar for all the programs. The businesses must be at least 51% owned and controlled by a minority, a woman, or women, or other disadvantaged individual, or in the case of a VBE, a veteran. And under the BEPD program, the business must be at least 51% owned and controlled by an individual with a disability. And businesses could meet different types of certification at the same time. If you're a veteran and you're also a minority and a woman, you can be a VBE, MBE, and WBE if you meet all of their eligibility requirements. So they're not mutually exclusive. For the different certification programs involved, there's contract monitoring and compliance associated with that, because we want to make sure that the firms we certified actually meet the requirements and maintain the requirements for those programs. So our department will monitor the actual utilization of MBEs, WBEs, DBEs that have been listed as subcontractors in a compliance plan. And a compliance plan is something that's submitted with a bid, or with your bid in response to our solicitation, and it tells us who you're going to use as subs, what the percentages of different types of subs, MBEs, WBEs are, to meet certain contract goals. And we also ensure compliance with Chicago residency ordinance requirements and the equal employment opportunity commitments. So with respect to the Chicago residency ordinance, construction contracts that are valued at $100,000 and more, and they're funded by the City of Chicago, 50% of the total work hours have to be performed by actual residents of the City of Chicago, and 7.5% of the work hours have to be performed by project area residents. And this is to ensure that if city taxpayer dollars are going to a construction contract, we want to ensure opportunities for city residents and people who are actually living in the area where we're doing the project. And the project area requirements are going to be told to you in the bid package. So you'll know ahead of time, you won't have to do any guesswork about where those residents have to come from. And for equal employment opportunity, this is intended to promote equality of opportunity for minority and female personnel on city-funded construction contracts. An award criteria determination, which is based on a canvassing formula, is inserted into each contract specification that's estimated at $100,000 or more. And bidders are invited to propose certain utilization goals. If you're interested, there's information on our website about the EEO program that can provide more information about that, and I'd be happy to point you in the direction. So contracting, monitoring, and compliance. There's different ways to achieve compliance. The prime contractor can be an MBE, or DBE, or in the case of EPD and VBEs, those as well. You can joint venture with another MBE, WBE, or DBE. You can subcontract a portion of the work to an MBE, WBE, or DBE. Or you can purchase materials that are used in the performance of the contract for one or more MBE, WBE, or DBEs. So for example, for construction contracts, again, let's say part of the work involved means you need to have someone come pour concrete. And in order to meet your MBE goal, you decide to hire a minority-owned business enterprise to pour that concrete. If they're certified with the city or Cook County, because we have a reciprocity program, that MBE's work pouring concrete for you on the construction project will count towards your MBE goal. There's also reporting requirements involved. Prime contractors are responsible for submitting subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls so that we know that people are actually getting paid properly in accordance with all of the contractual terms, and waivers of lien. So moving on to some of our programs and bid incentives, we have a number of programs and bid incentives designed to encourage or provide opportunities for different groups of people and individuals. So for example, the Small Business Initiative, or the SBI program for construction. This is available for construction contracts valued at $3 million or less. There's also a mid-sized business incentive program for construction contracts that are $3 million to $10 million. So these are contracts that are just for small business or medium-sized business firms. There's a diversity credit program, so you would get credit for the use of MBE-WB firms on private sector contracts, and then you'll have a credit that you can apply on future city contracts. There's a mentor-protege program, and this is designed to encourage prime contractors with established businesses to mentor MBE-WBE firms so that they can build experience and grow their firm and eventually graduate from the MBE-WBE program. And a way to incentivize firms to enter into these mentoring agreements is that we have a bid incentive program now for primes who have a mentoring agreement and are utilizing an MBE through the mentoring program. So they're actually able to benefit from the mentoring program. Some of our bid incentives, there's a small business enterprise for construction. There's a veteran-owned business enterprise incentive. So for this one, there is one for subcontractors. If you use a veteran-owned business enterprise as a subcontractor, there's an incentive. There's also a program for small local veteran-owned businesses, as well as small business and veteran-owned business joint ventures. There is an incentive for utilizing business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities. There's also an incentive for using city-based manufacturers. There's an incentive for city-based businesses. In the city-based business, there's three types. There's depending on the level of utilization, you can get a 2%, 4%, or 6% bid incentive. And just to back up a minute, a bid incentive is basically an artificial price adjustment to your bid price. So if you bid $100,000 on a contract and you have a 2% incentive, we'll deduct 2% from your base bid price of $100,000, so that when we're evaluating bids against each other, if somebody with no bid incentives also bids $100,000, you're going to come in as the lowest because you have the 2% incentive deducted from your bid. It doesn't affect how much your contract value is for. If your bid is $100,000, that's what the contract's for, but it just means for evaluation purposes, your bid is going to be lower. Sure, and there's actually a bid incentive workshop next Wednesday that's at 2:30 that's going to give a deep dive into all these bid incentives and can provide much more specifics about how they all work. And just a few other I didn't mention on here. There's also programs for apprentice utilization and also ex-offender apprentice utilization. And then there's also an incentive for alternately powered vehicles. And this is to encourage the use, or for businesses to have a fleet of vehicles that use alternately powered. Trying to cut down on emissions. So that was a lot of information, I realize. But like I said, there's another workshop that gives you much more details on how all of those different programs and incentives work. So moving on to the DPS website, there's a lot of information available on the website that can help you with learning how to do business with the city, how our programs work, about our rules, so it's a great resource for you. So on our website, you can find awarded contracts and modifications. You can find information about all the payments made under contracts. You can find information on the bid tabulations, as I mentioned earlier in this workshop. When we open and read bids within 24 hours, the tabulations are going to go on our website. There's information about all of the weekly bid opportunities. There's a searchable directory of certified firms. So if you're trying to find an MBE or WBE firm to work with you on a project, you can find that information on our website. All of the bid incentives I covered, there's information about those on our website. The city's regulations about all of our procurement is also on the website. So there's a ton of great information on there and resources for you. And you can get to our website. Sure, and you can get to our website by going to www.cityofchicago.org/procurement. And there's also a workshop on how to navigate the DPS website. So if you want a step-by-step guide of how to navigate and find all of these different resources I mentioned, that's a great tool for you. And the next one coming up looks like it's in October at 2:30 p.m. So just to touch on a couple of things that you can find on our website that seem to be things people are interested in often, is looking at vendors, contracts, and payments. So if you get to this page of our website, you'll see this drop-down menu on here where you can decide what you want to search for, whether you want to look at vendor information or if you're searching for a particular contract or award, or you want to know what the bid tabulations were for a bid that you submitted a bid on. You can select what it is. And so let's say you're searching for contracts and award. You'll have this page pop up. So if you know a vendor name, you can search the vendor. If you have the PO number, you can put that in. The spec number, any of the information you need to help you search. So in this example you see here, well, it's the right side, they were looking for a PO number of 4848. So when they search that, you can see that this contract, sorry, I'm trying to read a little font here, for State Street Subway, Lake and Randolph Station, CDOT. So it brought you there. So if that was what you were looking for, it brought you right to the PO for that. If you click on the PO, you'll see the original contract, and you'll also see all of the modifications associated with that contract. So anytime that we need to make a change to the contract, that information is going to be up here as well. And you can also search payments. So you can search the payment date, the year, the vendor name. And like I mentioned, you can search bid tabulations, and you can search by their name, the spec number, or the date of the bid opening, and that'll pop up all the information for you. So we have a social media presence that can give you a lot of information, as well as our website. You can sign up for DPS alerts. You can go to our Twitter, as well as our Facebook page. So we'll post information about our workshops, new programs and incentives that we have, all of our, let's see, what did I already say? All of the bid advertisement and addenda, events, new policies and procedures. So it's a great resource if you're interested in doing business with the city and you want to learn more about opportunities. Use our Facebook, our Twitter, and DPS alerts are great tools to help make sure that you're getting the information you need. So that is the extent of the material we're going to cover. Happy to answer any questions you have. Again, general questions, happy to tackle. If it's a contract specific, we can talk offline. And if you want to reach me, you can contact me by email. It's julie.krupa2@cityofchicago.org. Apparently there's 2 Julie Krupas, so I'm Julie Krupa 2. So all right, thank you for attending.
Anyone have any overall questions? None at this time?
Sure.
I'm loaded with questions today. So Julie, when you're essentially searching for the bids, is this a separate portal? Is this part of iSupply or is that separate?
When you're searching for bid opportunities, or you're searching for?
Oh, if you're searching for bid opportunities, that's not iSupplier, that's in DPS.
Yeah, that's in DPS.
Okay.
Yeah.
iSupplier, so the e-procurement system, so we have a bid opportunity list on our website, on the DPS website, where we list all of our bid opportunities. We list them on our bid opportunity list, and then we also have them on our e-procurement page. So we have them across as many areas as possible. So that's where you'll find the same information in 3 different areas. Mm-hmm. One question.
So if you're a startup or a small business who, when you're looking for an RFP, it may be too large for you to actually handle as a new business. Mm-hmm. But if you want to be a subcontractor, how do you make sure, after the process is over, that people understand that you can subcontract for that work if you are a minority or woman business enterprise certified?
Yeah, a good way to do that if you're interested in subcontract opportunities is when we have RFPs, especially for big projects, there's usually going to be kind of a similar pre-bid meeting to in a sealed bids, and that's an opportunity for bidders or proposers to come in and ask questions. So if you go to that, that's a great opportunity to network and meet primes that are interested in bidding, hand out your card, tell them what you can do, and try to make those connections there. And DPS also offers vendor fairs and workshops so that it gives an opportunity to interact with primes and make those connections.
And then another resource is that buying plan that we mentioned at the beginning. If you see an RFP listed on there, or there's a column that also says subcontracting opportunities, so you can go on there and kind of start seeing what's coming up that way as well. Mm-hmm. Welcome. Any other questions? All right.
Oh, I have cards. I just wanted to give it for the people online who couldn't see my card.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll stay after class for anything else that might come up. Thank you so much for being here.